Chapter 2362 Boundless Sword Domain 1. The ice-blue giant sword formed a tower, and with the support of the dual forces of time and space, and under the endless sharpness of the eternal judgment sword, it generated the most powerful killing intent, pointing directly at the Mad Owl. They floated silently in the air, slowly rotating, forming a tall tower resembling the ancient Roman Colosseum, reaching up to the sky, and there were countless such giant swords. Each ice-blue great sword exudes a chilling aura and a will to freeze everything. This is the strongest domain that Zhang Yi can currently unleash, combining his own spatial power with Ling's eternal ice-type rules, the infinite sword domain. In this field, Zhang Yi is the absolute master. With a thought, thousands upon thousands of ice-blue sword blades seem to come alive, transforming into streaks of blue lightning that shot from all directions and from all incredible angles toward the dark core of the domain, the very source of the Mad Owl. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The blade pierces the darkness not through simple physical cutting, but with the terrifying property of freezing time and space. Each strike of the blade leaves an unhealable, icy blue frost mark on the darkness, and the frozen area continues to expand. Even more terrifying is that in the area struck by the blade, the flow of time becomes extremely slow, almost to the point of stopping. When a second passed, and millions of sharp swords had completely sealed off the Mad Owl. Mad Owl was horrified to discover that the mental pollution he had spread was greatly restricted and frozen by these damned ice swords. His physical movement, reorganization, and even thought processes became sluggish. No. What kind of power is this? The power of space. No, why is time slowed down? You even possess the power of time. His mental roar was filled with unbelievable terror. Yang Xinxin did not miss this opportunity. Behind her, the enormous fallen golem, controlled by strands of black rules, repeatedly drew back its massive longbow of judgment, shooting black mimetic virus arrows at the Mad Owl. Once he chooses to disintegrate and respond to Zhang Yi's energy sword attack in a divided manner, he will inevitably have to face Yang Xinxin's rule-based attacks. He had to choose between two painful options. The mimetic arrows fired by the fallen golems are more accurate and frequent. Each arrow was like the last straw that broke the camel's back, making matters worse for the tyrant. Zhang Yi stood in the center of the sword domain, holding the eternal judgment sword, his cold gaze fixed on the Mad Owl who was being stripped of his existence and frozen in time and space under the attacks of countless ice swords. He was like a god who wielded punishment, determined to completely erase this blasphemous monster from the realms of time and space. I told you you're not leaving today. The Mad Owl didn't have much time to think. He raised his great sword and roared in resistance. Shadow Ember. A black river of spatial rules surged upwards, sweeping in all directions, attempting to completely block Zhang Yi's attack. But by doing so, he would be unable to withstand Yang Xinxin's arrows. The meme arrow, ignoring the energy body, shot into the black river and fed back to the Mad Owl's main body. His heart trembled violently, and in an instant, he lost control of part of his body. Separation of cause and effect. The pain was like being forcibly cut in two from his soul. He chose to cut himself again, but the side effect was that his strength became weaker. He looked up in horror at the man and woman standing in the myriad manifestations sword domain. One is a dual space-time system, capable of both offense and defense, and the other is a rule system that can ignore the energy of the material world. When these two join forces, their fighting power increases exponentially. Sizzle. Another blade, imbued with extreme cold and the laws of time, appeared silently from a corner of the infinite sword domain, as if it had traversed the boundaries of space and time, precisely severing one of the arms that the Mad Owl was trying to rebuild. Before the arm even hit the ground, it transformed into a shower of fine black ice crystals amidst the absolute chill and the near-stagnant flow of time, and then vanished. This is the umpteenth time this has been done. In this sword-infested inferno dominated by Zhang Yi, Kuang Zhao's existence was slowly tortured, frozen, and erased. Yang Xinshin's meme arrows were like the most vicious virus, constantly invading his already chaotic core, altering the underlying logic of his existence, making it extremely difficult for him to even concentrate on fighting against these endless blades. It's no use. Struggling will only prolong your pain. Zhang Yi's voice echoed in the sword domain, cold and devoid of any emotion. Holding the eternal sword of judgment, he stood at the core of the domain, like a cold sculpture, with only the data flowing in his eyes showing that he was precisely controlling the trajectory of each blade. The Mad Owl's form could no longer remain stable, flickering wildly between the distorted ink and the mangled human shape. His mental roars became intermittent, filled with despair and resentment. I am not reconciled. If I hadn't been corrupted by Samuel, my mind would be incomplete, my power would have weakened. You two sixth-generation Earthlings, how could you? Before he could finish speaking, a massive, ice-blue sword the size of a door came crashing down on him, splitting his newly formed head open once more. Yang Xinshin's meme arrow arrived almost simultaneously, accurately piercing the exploded dark core. Ah! A blood-curdling scream, as if the soul had been utterly torn apart, echoed throughout the sword domain. The dark energy representing the mad tyrant's origin contracted and expanded violently, finally collapsing like a punctured balloon into an extreme black, and then vanished with a roar. The countless icy blue sword blades suddenly stopped, and then, as if they had lost their target, slowly dissipated into the void. The infinite sword domain was deactivated, and the shattered dark sun forest landscape reappeared, but the suffocating mental pollution pressure in the air had been greatly reduced. Just as the Mad Owl's original essence was completely annihilated, a point of extremely condensed, yet no longer imbued with madness, pure dark energy floated in place like a firefly. That was the purest night-level essence, stripped of Samuel's corruption and the Mad Owl's consciousness. Zhang Yi reached out and drew that source of power into his hand. Feeling the immense power contained within, he pressed it into his brow without hesitation. Boom! It felt like a thunderbolt had exploded inside my body. A surge of immense energy, like a river bursting its banks, rushed wildly into his body. On his tactical goggles, his ability index began to jump wildly, eventually surging by 2,000 points and stabilizing at a high of 47,000 points. This is only the initial result of absorption. The remaining primordial power has settled in his body and needs time to be slowly digested. Chapter 2363 Boundless Sword Domain 2. However, at the very moment of Kuang Zhao's death, an extremely faint yet exceptionally clear mental thought, like a final burst of energy before death, entered the minds of Zhang Yi and Yang Xinshin. That was the last vestige of clarity that the Mad Owl retained. The voice was intermittent, a sign that his spirit was slowly fading away. Ha ha, did you win? Too bad, you only killed a mad, pathetic wretch. If it were me at my peak, you wouldn't be able to kill me. Be careful, in the Dark Sun Forest there are many beings here, far more terrifying than me. I was corrupted like this back then and lost myself. Zhang Yi's eyes narrowed, and he immediately used his mental power to ask, "Where are Burning Bone and Instant Meteor? Have you seen them?" The fading consciousness responded intermittently. Those two, the later intruders, they went to the center to find the Night Witch. The Night Witch, she is 1,000 times more terrifying than me. The conversation ended abruptly there. The last trace of the Mad Owl's existence vanished without a trace. Zhang Yi and Yang Xinshin exchanged a glance, both seeing the seriousness in each other's eyes. Night Witch, a name that sounds ominous, was actually described by Mad Owl as being 100 times more terrifying than him. Just then, the surrounding environment began to change strangely. Like a faded oil painting, the illusions created by the mental pollution of the madman have completely dissipated. However, the figures of King Arthur, Indra, Benjamin Morgan, and others who were fighting each other began to blur and distort and finally vanished completely like a bubble. The true scene, which had been obscured by battle and illusion, was now laid bare before the two. Where are the coalition camps now? Where are the allies who fought side by side? They were standing on a mountain peak made up of countless giant, white skeletons. These skeletons were enormous, some with ribs like arched bridges and skulls like small mountains, exuding an aura of desolation and death. Further away, there are towering, pitch-black mountains that constantly exude viscous black mist, the very embodiment of Samuel's spiritual pollution. The air was thick with the smell of decay and despair. This seemingly intense, coordinated joint operation just now, apart from the real battle between Zhang Yi and Yang Xinxin and the brief support from Leibniz and Orion under the protection of the apocalypse, was all a massive illusion created by Mad Owl using mental pollution before his death. King Arthur and his companions may have already fallen into a frenzy of fighting their own battles the moment the Mad Owl launched its large-scale mental pollution campaign, and may even have already been swallowed up by the Dark Sun Forest. What Zhang Yi and the others saw before was only part of the script that Kuang Xiao wanted them to see. Yang Xinxin's empty gaze swept over this scene of true hell, and she said softly, "From the very beginning, he was trying to break our minds." Those scenes of fighting side by side were meant to make us lower our guard and make us more vulnerable to the final outbreak of pollution. Zhang Yi silently gazed at the eternal judgment sword in his hand, which seemed to have solidified even further. Feeling the surging power within his body, he felt a secret thrill, but also a touch of solemnity. Where did those guys go? I don't believe they were all swallowed up by the Dark Sun Forest. The Mad Owl is dead, but the horrors of the Dark Sun Forest have only just begun to unfold. Burning Bones and Instant Meteor's target is the Night Witch, but ahead of them lies an existence 100 times more terrifying than Mad Owl. Zhang Yi frowned, a question growing ever deeper in his mind. According to intelligence, Meteor Shower, as a spark, has no combat power. Burning Bones' strength is at most at the level of Lone City and Morning Storm. Even we, who have come here, are having such a hard time fighting the Mad Owl. How could they possibly escape? Moreover, the night which they are searching for. He opened the intelligence reports given to him by the two great empires, which contained a list of all individuals suspected of entering the Dark Sun Forest over the past 10,000 years. Among them are some extremely powerful beings. Which one is the Night Witch? Zhang Yi found more than a dozen Black Moon priests from the Dark Moon Empire and Silver Moon Guardians from the Radiant Moon Empire on the list. They entered the Dark Sun Forest for various reasons, and none of them left. If they are still alive, they will surely cause even greater trouble for Zhang Yi in the future. Let's find those guys first. Zhang Yi looked around. Kuang Xiao was dead, and the illusion slowly disappeared. The survivors will not be too far from this place. Just as he was thinking about how to find the person, a crack suddenly appeared in the ground beneath his feet. Zhang Yi's eyes suddenly turned to that direction, and the second hand of time was activated. The next moment, he saw a white dog's head emerge from the ground. It's Brian's head. It looked at Zhang Yi and Yang Xinxin, then glanced around before finally letting out a sigh of relief. Oh, damn it. Is it finally over? Those guys were really crazy. They suddenly started yelling and slashing at me with such a big sword. Luckily, I dodged it. Brian popped out, barking as he ran to Zhang Yi's side, saying, "I still feel safe with you, my dear bro." "You weren't affected by the illusion?" Zhang Yi asked with some curiosity. Brian proudly declared, "How could mere illusions affect my unwavering will and courageous heart?" But Professor Leonardo da Vinci bluntly exposed its flaws. "I've modified this guy's brain so it won't be affected by abnormal external signals. But we don't know where they've gone, and we can't tell which way they are." Brian looked at the erratic pointers on the magnetic field instrument on his wrist and sighed helplessly. What a terrible start. Zhang Yi looked at Brian and said, "Hey Brian, you're a dog, you should have a good nose, right? Can you help me find them?" Brian shrugged and said, "LeBron James. This place reeks of corpses. My sense of smell is about to break down. Besides, those guys were fighting like madmen just now. Who knows how far they ran off to? They might all be dead." Zhang Yi gave a thumbs up. "Your lips are as sweet as honey." Yang Xinxin suggested, "Then let's send a signal to them." make signal flares in the shape of Chinese characters, and launch them into the sky. That way, they can see them no matter how far away they are. Just have them gather at the center of Dark Sun Forest. Zhang Yi thought for a moment, then nodded and said, "Good idea. Now that everyone is scattered, we can only rely on our own abilities. I hope they can all survive. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good to have a few less cannon fodder when the fighting starts." Chapter 2364 Boundless Sword Domain 3. Zhang Yi stood on a relatively open, bone-heavy high ground, surrounded by twisted, black, and withered trees. The branches of these trees were strangely intertwined, like the arms of a dying person. The oppressive atmosphere of the Dark Sun Forest was almost tangible, and the air was filled with a mixture of putrid and bloody stench. He raised the arm of the demon armor high, pointing it towards the sky. He used an intelligent system to project energy, which then radiated across the sky. A silvery white light pierced the dim sky, and ancient hieroglyphs of Earth appeared one by one. Everyone, proceed to the center of the Dark Sun Forest to assemble. The Moon people can understand the meaning behind the language they use, by analyzing it. However, these mentally corrupt individuals in the Dark Sun Forest are unlikely to be able to decipher the meaning of these Chinese characters. Therefore, this ensures that others can safely travel to the center of Dark Sun Forest. Each stroke contains a stable energy radiation fluctuation, which can be clearly perceived even in this area with severe mental interference, like a lighthouse in the darkness. You can see it clearly just by looking up. Yang Xinxin stood 3 meters behind him, her black dress motionless in the breeze caused by the energy. Her empty eyes swept across the surroundings, the fallen puppet appearing and disappearing in her shadow. The energy radiation beam is located 3,000 meters in the sky, which is enough to ensure that it can be seen throughout the entire Dark Sun Forest and will last for up to 6 hours. They can see it as long as they're not dead. Her voice was calm yet precise, carrying an undeniable certainty. Zhang Yi nodded slightly. This range should cover most of the areas where the survivors were active. He took one last look at the burning words in the sky, then turned and leaped off the mountain of bones. "Let's go. Hopefully we'll run into old friends on the way." His voice was emotionless, but his grip on the knife tightened unconsciously. The two walked side by side, with a large white dog wagging its tail beside them, and soon disappeared into the darkness deeper into the forest. Almost at the same moment the signal lit up. The powerful figures scattered throughout the Dark Sun Forest all raised their heads in unison. Odin had just escaped from a bloody illusion, and the bloodstains still lingered in his single eye. He leaned on the broken thunder spear, struggling to support his body. He had just witnessed a massacre, and many corpses lay scattered across the surrounding land. They weren't enemies, but rather minions of the Norse temple of Asgard. In the midst of their frenzied mental corruption, they saw each other as enemies and then killed one another. Odin, regaining his senses, had a fleeting look of pain in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by determination. Dark Sun Forest, what a terrifying place. It's not as simple as it seems to be to become humanity's savior. When he looked up, he inadvertently saw familiar words in the sky, and a glimmer of clarity flashed in his cloudy eyes. Gathering signal, pictographic writing, it's Chinese characters. Chaos, that guy actually killed that guy with a superpower index of 50,000 points. Odin's eyes were churning violently, and everyone else was dumbfounded. I thought I had seen through his strength time and time again, but now it seems that I am as weak as an ant in front of him. Odin's voice was tinged with bitterness. He had an urge to find Zhang Yi as soon as possible. He mistakenly believed that he and Zhang Yi were on the same level. Therefore, Zhang Yi knew he was going to enter the Dark Sun Forest, but he didn't feel much fear or worry, and he didn't take the danger too seriously. But now he knows. Without Zhang Yi's protection, he would most likely be in trouble if he encountered those mental polluters in the Dark Sun Forest. The central area of the Dark Sun Forest, damn it, without a compass, it's really hard to tell which way is which. He gritted his teeth and cursed, his voice terribly hoarse. He looked around, trying to find some of his companions who were still alive. Loki and Hela gradually recovered from their madness. The three of them looked at each other and saw fear and exhaustion in each other's eyes. On another battlefield, Indra had just shattered the last illusion. The seven treasures' golden steps were now dim and lifeless. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked towards the signal in the sky. Finally, we have a direction. He gave a wry smile, determined the direction, and immediately sped away, his figure flashing rapidly among the dead trees. Benjamin Morgan was in the most precarious situation. The tycoon was hiding in a broken gold coin barrier, his expensive suit now just rags. Upon seeing the signal, he breathed a sigh of relief, then looked at the banknotes scattered all over the ground with a pained expression. This deal was a huge loss. He muttered to himself, but quickly tidied his clothes and moved toward the center. In the frigid realm, the goddess of winter, Morana, had just frozen her last mad colleague. Alexei gripped his battle axe with both hands, his upper body clad in a suit that tightly bound his massive, polar bear-like frame. "Look there." He pointed towards the sky. Morana looked up and, sure enough, saw the words Zhang-Yi had left in the distant sky. Her icy blue eyes gazed at the sky, and she nodded slightly. The chill around her condensed into a path of ice crystals, extending in the direction indicated by the signal. At this point, Odin's group was in the worst situation. When they regained consciousness, they found themselves in a strange, black desert. The sand was icy cold, and with each step you would sink deeper into it, as if countless hands were pulling you down. "There's something wrong with this sandy area." Hela was the first to notice the anomaly. Her death powers were severely suppressed here, making it difficult even to summon the lowest undead. Loki gripped his battle axe tightly, his eyes blazing with murderous intent. "I feel something is watching us." Her intuition was always accurate, and at this moment, she felt even more terrified. Odin and Hela's gazes immediately sharpened. "Damn it, can I really be that unlucky? If I really run into the monsters here, that would be a real problem." Before he finished speaking, the sand suddenly began to shift. The fine black sand grains slid like living things, and a huge vortex quickly formed around the three of them, with a terrifying suction force coming from underground. "Careful." Loki tried to leap up, but was pulled back by an invisible force. Odin roared and, without the slightest hesitation, slammed the eternal spear in his right hand into the black quicksand vortex beneath him. Silver lightning suddenly erupted beneath him, instantly creating a violent recoil force in the dark sand. Using this force, the three of them soared into the air and landed far away on several black boulders. A sickening grinding sound came from underground, as if countless sharp teeth were gnawing at the rocks. Sand grains shot into the sky, and a massive figure slowly emerged from the dark sandstorm. A monster appeared before them. Dear viewers, thanks for staying with me. We'll try to get you more updates. Please like and subscribe and share the video with your friends. Love you all.